Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 8 game preview and picks live stream in association with Quinbet. Good evening to all of you who are watching us this Thursday evening, and hello to everyone watching back or listening to the podcast after we're done recording here. Week 8 gets underway and in Inglewood tonight at SoFi, where the Chargers host the Vikings. You can check out our Thursday night football preview with Brian and Kieran to get the update on that one. There's no afternoon games this Sunday. We've had the half-2 window for the last couple of weeks with the international games. The series does take a breather before we have the Berlin game in 2 weeks' time. Very much looking forward to that one. We do, of course, have an earlier start, though, so that's one to be watchful for, because the clocks, of course, go back in Ireland, the UK, and across Europe a little bit earlier than they do in the States. So that means a 5 o'clock start, which means obviously the later games are an hour earlier for us as well, making for earlier bedtimes and less disruption to sleep for everyone who follows on this side of the Atlantic. And we treasure those precious few weeks. We got 6 teams on a bye, resulting in 13 games for us across the weekend, including the Thursday night football games. So we got 12 to pick tonight, starting in what we will now call the 5 o'clock window, just for the avoidance of confusion, with the Browns' visit to the New England Patriots. Shane, your Pats on a roll, looking to make it a 5-piece.
Very much so. I mean, like 4 in a row, 3 on the road coming into this one. There's a lot of buzz going around New England at the moment. Probably the greatest sort of level of energy you've seen from Boston Sports since the last time that a Boston Sports team was good, which is what, last year. They're definitely a spoiled bunch as people in Kansas City.
Sorry, but just goddamn your black hearts. Like, it's like these years in the wilderness. What's it been, like 3-4 years max?
It has been the longest 3 years of my life. You know, but not like just starting on the challenges that's going to come ahead, because I think as much as the Patriots have built up a lot of steam and a lot of fans, particularly in terms of the way that Drake May is passing the ball, not only in the fact that he's making a lot of high completions, but there's a lot of explosive plays in there, and the fact that he's just really passing the eye test and how good he looks and how people really like watching him. The phrase MVP has been thrown about, but I don't think I think it's being thrown out more by people who are looking for attention more than it is by people who are probably genuinely being serious considering the level of defense they're playing against. But on the Brown side of things, I mean, you have to remember as well, obviously, the Browns coming off the back of a big victory against Miami. Now, Miami are a basket case, I think, who are very much in decline, as we'll be talking about later on. But there are a couple of elements here which I think that New England may not necessarily match up well, particularly against this Cleveland defense. You have to remember that Myles Garrett was back in really good form against Miami last week, and he's playing up against an offensive line who has been able to hold up in those last 3 road games. But Will Campbell, as much as he has improved, might not necessarily keep that consistency rolling. We're not quite sure what's going to happen as well with the rest of the Patriots offensive line. And playing against Drake May, who, again, because as much as he's been making all these great throws, he's been holding the ball more than most quarterbacks in the league. Yes, he was 21 or 23 last week, and he was able to pass around to a lot of other guys, but he's one of the few quarterbacks in the league who's spending more than 3 seconds before he's taking the time to throw. Most of the sacks he's taken aren't because of his offensive line, they're because he's holding on to the ball very long. Now, we've seen that he's been able to navigate that quite well in terms of being able to scramble at the right time, but not over-relying on it too much. He's been given time against some of the defenses played last week, particularly against Tennessee last week, to hold on to it for 3+ seconds and then find a wide receiver that's in space. I don't think he's going to get that against his Cleveland team, which is why I think we might be coming into maybe not necessarily a trap game, but a game that might be a bit more difficult than a lot of New England fans are anticipating. I think this has a potential to be quite a low-scoring affair. I still think the Patriots are going to win, though, not only because, if the run game manages to be semi-productive, because it hasn't been the best going into this, but if they manage to just not turn over the ball in the way they did in Foxborough in week 3 against Pittsburgh, then I'm sure they'll be fine. They won't give Cleveland too many opportunities to sweep up. And then Drake May is still going to pass. Like, Stephon Diggs has played absolutely superb in these last 3 games. He had 7 targets last week, and he made all 7 catches. And I think is not only getting space, is really working into the scheme, is really working well with his teammates, and has become a lot more physical in how he's catching the ball, as we saw against Buffalo a couple of weeks ago. Matt Collins is getting into the game for deep throws. Kayshon Boutte has scored in back-to-back games. There's a lot to like about this Patriots offense that I think will find a way to win if this Cleveland defense actually puts it up to them to be a much tougher challenge than what we've seen Carolina or Tennessee put up to them in the last couple in that 4-game win streak. But I think we're not looking for there's a lot of I know there's a lot of people who've flown over from Ireland to watch this game, and there's a couple of Patriots fans who are going to be in Foxworth this weekend expecting it's just a sort of lights out performance. I think it's going to be a bit more tougher than that, but It's going to be a low scoring game. And one of the reasons it's going to be a low scoring game because, of course, I don't expect much from this Cleveland offense. But I think the Patriots will have to find a way to win here. This might be a bit more of a tougher challenge than we expect, but I'm expecting them to do it.
Brian, this Cleveland offense, as Shane said, looks pretty pedestrian. And to be fair to them, they're trying to protect Dylan Gabriel, not expose him to too much. Give him short, easy to complete throws, lean heavily on Quinshon Judkins, a rookie running back sensation, rather, I should say. They lean heavily then on their run defense in particular, which has been one of the best in the league. But that unit has been put under a lot of pressure simply because the Browns can't hang on to the ball and move the chains the way they should be able to do. They, of course, shipped Joe Flacco out of town, much to Cleveland's delight or much to Cincinnati's delight and to Pittsburgh Steelers' chagrin. But they're Dylan Gabriel's show now, and as he goes, so goes the team.
Yeah, but I think with all due respect, it's all run through Junkins. He's it's funny, you've got two rookies coming in, two running back rookies who are both selected in the second round, and Junkins is the leading rookie across the league for yards, 467. He's had 5 of his last 7 games have been 70-yard scrimmage games. It kind of signifies where this Browns offense is. A lot of it is led through him last week, 3 touchdowns. They're trying to do their utmost. We saw it in London first time, Stephen Kieran. They weren't trying to put the ball in the hands of their rookie quarterback to go and win the game. They were doing their utmost. He got a 100-plus game in that one as well. So if he can get the run game going effectively, I think to Shane's point, it may be a low-scoring game and they can stay within touching distance. But I saw an interesting stat today in terms of turnover ratio. The pass defense is a 2+ ratio compared to the Browns, and ultimately that's why I think we're in for. I see turnovers. I see a sloppy game from the Browns. I think the Patriots. Shane is trying to be nice here. He's trying to be diplomatic and keep the Browns in this game. I think we're all inevitably going to go with the Patriots to win. 5 in a row for the Patriots come Sunday evening.
Yeah, I got Pats here as well, Kieran. How about you?
Yep, definitely the Pats for me.
We move on to Link, where the Giants visit the Eagles in the return of the fixture we saw only 2 weeks ago, where the Giants got their season back on track in spectacular fashion, only to leave the tracks in even more spectacular fashion, sorry lads, the following week in Denver. I fear for the Giants in this one. I don't know where they're going to be after what happened in Mile High. That's the kind of game that can really send your season into a dark place very quickly. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm not trying to manifest it. Spoke about what happened to Bears after the Hail Mary Commanders game last year, and they went and lost 10 games in a row. Things can really spiral quickly after a loss like that, and it's going to take a lot within the locker room, and it's going to take a lot in a coaching setup that I'm not sure anybody believes in anymore or should believe in after what happened last week, because you do not give up 33 points in a quarter if you're a well-coached team. It just doesn't happen. As Kieran, I know you were saying when we did the recap show just on Monday, it's inconceivable, except that it happened. So it clearly is conceivable. We saw Jalen Hurts go into the Vikings last week into that building and put up a perfect passer rating. The Eagles were far from perfect in that game. The statistics and the throwing, particularly to AJ Brown, that enabled Hurts to build up that rating, maybe papers over some of the cracks, or can fool you into thinking that the Eagles are in slightly better shape than they actually are. It still doesn't look like they quite have an identity, and they're still figuring some things out. But again, as we've been saying over and over again, and not to sound like a broken record on this one, they just have so much talent. They can get through these things. They can iron out the wrinkles in their season. I think they're more further along the path towards doing that than they were when the Giants upended them the last time around. And they'll obviously have circled this one in the calendar and want to give it back to the Giants in a big way, which I think, I'm afraid to say, for the Giants fans in the building, they very much will do. Kieran.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little concerned before the Broncos game to see how they would come out of the traps after the euphoria of the Eagles game, and we saw how they started for the first 3 quarters. This game is. I mean, I'm not going to mention coaching because, we've talked coaching and, decision making till the cows come home. This is about how the players respond and how they get up off the floor. A lot of these players haven't been in this position before. Players that in college that have been used to winning seasons, like Dart, Scatabo, Theo Johnson, winning seasons everywhere. So this is going to be I don't want to call it a players only kind of event, but this is one where the players are going to have to get themselves together and figure out what they want to do, because a season that was back on track after the Eagles game, you don't want to see it slide into oblivion. I mean, 2-5 is not great, but it's not insurmountable. I remain optimistic because what we saw in the fourth quarter, there's no way that can be repeated. So the only way from here is up. With the Eagles, the strange thing now is the Eagles they're a passing team. They're not a running team anymore. It's all through AJ Brown and Smith. Saquon is an afterthought. I don't know if that's what Patillo was thinking, or if he's trying to rest him for the later part of the season. But Saquon is consistently hitting up 40, 50, 60 yards in games. But it's all, he's using those weapons of AJ Brown and Smith to devastating effect. Smith is an absolute ball hawk. He's a slight kid, 190 pounds, but he puts it up there with the biggest corners. And we've seen what what AJ Brown can do. Again, then it's coming down to Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is having a great season. There's no other way about it. I mean, he's one of his best games last week when he went for three. He threw for 326 yards, got his top wide receivers into the game. But the thing that gives me hope with the Giants is that the Eagles they've not won a game by more than a touchdown this season. They've won by 4, 3, 7, 6, and then 6 again. Eerily similar to what the Chiefs did last year. And I hope their pattern doesn't repeat this year. But with the Giants, what concerns me a lot is the secondary. Obviously, we lost to Debo and Holland. I don't know if they're going to be healthy. The Giants have given up 1,717 passing yards this season, which is the 5th most in the league. You're not going to do much with a kind of record like that or with a stat like that. And every quarterback they played has thrown for at least 200 yards, which is giving me even more kind of pause for thought. But the big question is, can the Giants pick themselves up off the floor? They're going to have to look at themselves. We saw Brian Burns when he went off the field last week, just furious. He can say all the good things and the nice things, but we all know what his fury was about. But on the flip side, we got Jackson Dart, completed 9 of 14 in the red zone trips into TDs, or he's converted 9 of 14 into touchdowns. He scored touchdown on each of the first 3 drives this season when he's been starting. I think the Giants are going to be. I think they're going to be in this right till the very end. I'd love to say they're going to win. I'm not going to pick them again because I didn't pick them against the Eagles 2 weeks ago. But I think they're going to be in the frame. I think it's going to be competitive. I think Hurts is going to have himself a big game, and there's going to be a lot of AJ Brown, a lot of Smith, which worries me for that Giants back four. But I think Dart and Scatterbo and the rest of the offense can muster something up, and they'll keep it competitive. If they can win, I'm not sure. I think the line is -7.5 for the Eagles. I think the Eagles will end up pulling away as they usually do in the last 4 or 5 minutes of this game. But I expect the Giants to be competitive. I expect them to, brush off last week's disappointment, come out showing something. Dart's got a lot of pride. He never faced that situation in college. He was at Ole Miss, just putting up win after win in the SEC. So he's going to want to prove and show something to people that he's not going to just, take it lying down. So I expect a strong performance from the Giants. But unfortunately, I can see the Eagles pulling away in the last 45 minutes, winning by 6, maybe 7.
Shane?
Yeah, Eagles for me.
Brian?
Eagles gained their revenge on their loss in MetLife a fortnight ago.
All right, we mentioned the Bengals and the new feel-good factor in Cincinnati because Joe Flacco has arrived in town. And Shane, what a difference one win makes in the NFL. We see this all the time. The Bengals forlorn, set adrift. The season's over. It's gone till next year. Even Joe Burrow was smiling on the sideline because a new hope emerges, just like in Star Wars Episode 4, in the shape of Joe Flacco. It now emerges that the Bengals might just have a chance to win just enough games for Joe to steer them to the playoffs, if you believe the narrative. And we talked about this, and it's been a bit of a trend over the last couple of weeks. You steal one, you win one that you're not expected to win, and lo and behold, then the Jets roll into town. And if the Jets beat the Jets, then the Bengals don't need to be the best version of the Bengals to beat them, might I suggest?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's amazing what happens with the Cincinnati Bengals when you get a quarterback that doesn't throw like 20 picks in a game, or I don't know how many how many was it, 3 or 4 they were averaging after Joe Burrow was taken out, and Joe Flacco comes in and just plays a pretty clean game. It was I'm looking at this, and I'll be honest, I'm trying to find a narrative to wonder where the Jets are going to find their win, because I don't believe that the way that the defense has been playing, in particular, that there's an 0-17 team in them. I think somewhere that like they're going to have a win, maybe 2 in some point of the year. I just don't see it being this game for a few key reasons. I mean, firstly, we were talking about the fact that the Flacco was in, and look, to what extent was that win on Thursday just a bit of Thursday night weirdness, as we always seem to get every week, a bit of Thursday night weirdness? We saw that with the Giants and Eagles a couple of weeks ago. No offense, lads, but that's just the way that it kind of happens sometimes in the league, that a team doesn't show up or a team shows up more than we expect. And there was a lot of that, I think, in that Bengals Steelers game, as we'll talk about later when we touch on Steelers Packers. But Jamar Chase is looking more physical and alive, and he's really getting into the games a lot more than he has, I think, at any point of the season, even when Joe Burrow was playing the first couple of games. And he's come up against a Jets defense. It doesn't have Sauce Gardner. It looks like he's going to be out due a concussion. He's going to be covered instead by Brandon Stevens, who hasn't been the worst. I mean, pass defense for the Jets, again, hasn't been quite as dire as their pass offense. They've held the last two teams that played against to 13 points. That was against Bo Nix and the Broncos.
Just on that point, Shane, there was a time when you would have said Sauce Gardner being out was a disaster for the Jets. When is the last time Sauce Gardner was Sauce Gardner? Answers on a postcard.
That's a very good point as well. I mean, like, as I know, I think a lot of people are looking at it saying, "Oh, well, that's not exactly a great sign for them." But no, that's a fair point. I mean, there are other I was saying Brandon Stevens has come in there. I think you know, he's a young player. He's been impressive enough. He's not exactly come in as being like, oh well, we're playing a pretty bad secondary player here. I think you just compare to what the Bengals are doing now that Jake Browning isn't under center. It's quite funny, actually. You saw in a moment in that Thursday night game where Jake Browning had his head in the iPad and Joe Flacco was like, I don't need that iPad. I'm just going to try and face forward and play the game. And I think that his players are really reacting well to that. If you actually look at, you know, what he's been able to get out of not only Jamar Chase, but the tight end whose name has escaped me.
Mason Taylor.
The former Broncos tight end. Keep on guessing.
No, Fant.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry, that's the guy. Sorry, names escape me. But just in terms of what he's been able to really sort of ignite in that offense, and they've had an extra couple of days, and Joe Flacco was, you know, sort of getting a nice media attention this week, talking about like how, you know, he seems to be at peace with the fact that he's not with his family. And I think that there's a different energy coming in there. And the Jets have to remember that we know who the Jets quarterback is going to be yet. Aaron Glenn just did not give us that information. He was said, well, we're not going to tell you because we don't want the Bengals to get an advantage in knowing. Really, the reason why you're not telling us is because Tyrod Taylor is on a day-to-day with a knee injury, and you want to wait till the very, very last second before you commit to putting Justin Fields on the field because he's been so bad as he was in London a couple of weeks ago when we saw him there. So, look, like, the Jets need a really, really good run game, and they need Cincinnati to make a mess of their run defense scheme for the Jets to really have a chance of winning this one. But because Tyrod Taylor is probably not going to be playing, and if he is going to be playing, he's not going to be airing out the ball much. It's going to make the Jets offense remarkably predictable again. The Bengals defense is going to be able to handle it. And look, the Bengals to score 14 points, they have enough to win this one, and I think they'll do it.
Kieran, nothing defines the Jets circus more than when Sideshow Woody shows up. And Woody has intervened during the week, and nothing is more Jetsy than when that happens.
No, he's not exactly Jerry Jones. He's not as charismatic, but he definitely gives some sound bites that make you scratch your head. I mean, when you say something like, "If we could complete a pass, we'd be good. We'd be doing good." I mean, you can't say that in front of the press. You can't say that about, you can't talk about a professional team like that because that's just further undermining whatever confidence is left in this Jets team. And I don't think there's much there at all. Whether it's Tyrod Taylor or Fields starting, it's probably going to be Taylor. It doesn't really matter because this Bengals team right now is resurgent. Flacco coming in is a shot in the arm to Jamar Chase and to T. Higgins and to the whole offense, frankly. He gets the ball out of his hands super quick. He'll probably throw a couple of picks, but I don't think that's going to matter much against this Jets team, which will probably go 3 and out and then punt. Flacco coming in is just what the Bengals need. It's giving them life. They're 3-4 now. Playoffs are probably the furthest thing from the mind when you saw Chase slumping around the field and T. Higgins running routes and not catching anything. So Bengals could be back to 500. They probably will be after this game. And that is a huge thing for this team who are fighting for their lives, and not even in the AFC, but in the division. But the thing with Flacco is, like I said, he's getting rid of the ball quicker, but he's getting everybody involved. And I can see a lot of Chase Brown.
They could get Burrow back on current trajectory for the last 4 games. So, okay, you don't want to guarantee that Burrow's going to win you 4 games, but you just need to have one 6, maybe 7 to get to that point. It's not anymore an insurmountable feat.
No, and that division is shut out right now, so it's all up for grabs. So, if they can just muster along for the month of November and keep things tight and get a couple of wins here and there, I mean, they'll be back in it. And like I said, Chase Brown has been nondescript in this season. I expect the Bengals and Zach Taylor to run up some plays just to attack that always ever perennial suspect Jets run defense. I think it's gonna be a lot of Chase Brown mixing that up with obviously Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. With the Jets, I mean, what can you say? I mean, Aaron Glenn, I don't know what he thought when he was going in there, but he's facing a massive task. He's getting a little shorter with the New York media, and that'll test anybody's patience. But I mean, the Jets offense is anemic. I mean, only 14.2% of their plays have gained 10 or more yards, which is the lowest in the league. If you look at any stats throughout the league, the Jets, especially on offense, the Jets are pretty much at the bottom of it. Pretty much all offensive stats, and the only thing that's saving them is the defense. And like you said earlier, Sauce Gardner hasn't really made much of an impact. It's really the front four, the big dudes up front. They're kind of saving the Jets at the moment. But even they won't be able to sustain the battering that they're going to take this weekend. I mean, it's in Cincinnati. Jets. I mean, what kind of fight is left in this Jets team? They got the worst turnover margin and worst differential in sack differential in the league. So there's not a lot going in the Jets' favor. Everything's trending towards the Bengals. You got a resurgent Joe Flacco who loves nothing more than going to the bar and having a quiet pint without anybody bothering him. So it's just I can't see a situation where the Bengals are going to be bothered too much by the Jets team, who are, I mean, 0-7. What do you do? I mean, Glenn is now clutching his straws. He's kind of, not to use that overused phrase, but he's rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic. This Jets team is going down quick. And the Bengals are going to add to that. And I think the line it was 6.5. It'll probably be 8-9 by the time the game starts. And I expected the Bengals to win by, probably 2 touchdowns when all is said in the end.
Yeah, I agree with Shane. I don't think the Jets look like an 0-17 team, but however, I don't think that this is the week where they get that first win. It's Bengals for me too. Brian?
Full house, Bengals all the way.
Brian, it's up to Carolina. We go next, where the Bills take on the Panthers. Panthers have been very strong at home, but the Bills carrying 7.5 points with them. Nobody quite believing that the Carolina Express continues this weekend.
Yeah, a little bit surprised by the line, Connor. You came out and you're looking at a team that they've got huge momentum, the Carolina Panthers, and maybe it's the fact that the Bills are coming off a bye week, but the Bills on the road, I think they're averaging 19 points a game compared to the home games where they're averaging 30 points. We've seen the Bills this season go on the road. They're struggling. The Falcons game on the Monday Night Football never got out of second gear. And a Panthers team right now, you could argue is one of the talks of the season. Like they're coming into this game. Their defense is only giving up an average of they're giving up 19. The Bills on the road are scoring an average of 22. It kind of has that feeling about it. This game is going to come down into the fourth quarter and who makes the biggest plays. And I think inevitably I imagine we all feel that the Bills will find a way to get over the line. But I'm struck by, you look at this Panthers team and you look at all these players and you can get the sense that they're all playing for their head coach. They're only one game out of the lead in the division. It's a huge game for them if they could find a way to win this. It really would put them right in sweepstakes for the division. But something tells me that the Bills will have gone away off that Monday night loss against the Falcons, where they never really played, and say we need to right the wrongs with this. These weird things in the season where some team starts really hot and we all kind of lauded on them that these are the team that are going to be up there. And at the start of the season, they felt like that was the Bills, but they've had a shaky start. I think this is the time now they need to push on because we know the Chiefs are coming. You'd imagine a reaction with the Ravens. So I'll go with the Bills, but I think it could be one of the tighter games of the weekend. I don't think it's a 7.5 point spread in which Quimby have at the moment.
Sorry, I'm muted there. There were 2 lines, I have to say, that surprised me this week, to your point, Brian. One was this game, and the other one is a game we're going to talk about shortly, which was Bears-Ravens, where the bookie's not giving too much respect to the Bears' 4-game winning streak. We'll get to that presently. But this one did slightly surprise me. However, you look at the fact that the Bills are coming off the bye as well. I know they've lost their last 2 games, so you wouldn't necessarily pencil them in as 7.5 point favourites, but they are the kind of team. And okay, Sean McDermott, we've given him some flack here for the way a couple of these games have been coached, and we gave him some flack last year for the way the playoffs ended, and they're strange and stubborn decisions at times that can backfire for them. But they're a team that figured things out. They're the kind of team that you expect to come out of a bye and come out of it strongly. They've still got so much going for them. And we've seen them the past couple of seasons have their little dips and yet come out and roar along and win 4 or 5 games at a clip when they need to. And that's something that they've done reliably, no matter what the personnel changes have been from season to season, no matter what's come and gone. I mean, we forget, was it this time last year, or was it a little bit later when Sean McDermott had his horrendous 9/11 moment? There's been a lot going on in Buffalo, and they've managed to find ways to get through it. I do think that there's a lot of feistiness to Carolina. You know, they've won these games and they've been good value for some of them at least. I don't think this is going to be. I think it's a little bit too much to ask of them this weekend. I could think similar to you, Brian. I don't think it's going to be a 7.5, 8 point game. I don't see it being a 2-possession win for Buffalo. I do, however, see the Bills getting it back on track. I have confidence in them coming out of a bye week to get things straight and do enough to beat Carolina. Shane?
I've picked the Bills, but very briefly, I just want to do a quick stat which might change how people view this game. The Bills are allowing 5.8 yards per rush, and apparently the only team in history to have allowed more than that in terms of bad run defense was the 1934 Cincinnati Reds, a long defunct NFL franchise. That is an NBC/Pro Football Talk stat that I've nicked as credit where credit is due. But this game will be close, I think, but I've picked the Bills to win, and I'm going to stick with that.
Kieran?
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Right, we'll take a quick timeout. We'll be back with Bears-Ravens after that.
You know great odds, you're in control, you always bet responsibly, and you're not afraid to choose alternatives. That's why you bet with QuinnBet. Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. And with a 4-star Trustpilot customer service rating, why not give QuinnBet a shot? QuinnBet. We bet you love it.
Lamar Jackson is back for the Ravens home game against the Bears at the weekend, and that justifies a 6.5 point margin for the Ravens with the bookies, according to the way this one is being predicted. This section of the show, by the way, brought to you by the Arlington Hotel. Remember to check out all the action this Sunday from 5 o'clock at the Arlington Hotel on Bachelor's Walk in Dublin. Back to Bears-Ravens, where the Bears take a 4-game winning streak into town, but are serious underdogs on the road. Obviously, with Lamar back, that tends to make a big difference from a Baltimore perspective. Bears actually have the edge in their series against the Ravens. They haven't played a huge number of times, it should be said. The Ravens, of course, until this season, had only lost 1 game under Lamar Jackson's tenure to an NFC team. That has changed this season. They lost another one. Can the Bears make it 3? I don't think it's necessarily going to happen this weekend, but I don't see this as being a 6.5 point Ravens game either. I think we've seen a lot of things start to go right for Chicago. Interestingly, the one thing that doesn't seem to be going right is Caleb Williams. Still huge question marks over him after another fairly lackluster and enigmatic outing last week where he was up and down, threw an interception, ended up with a 61 rating in a game that the Bears won, leaning very heavily for the second week in a row on a transformed running offense with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai to the fore. They're racking up 5-6 yards a clip over the last couple of games. The Bears have also defended the run a lot better. The Bears are bottom 5 in rushing defense over the course of the season so far, but it's been markedly different in the past couple of weeks. They'll need all of that, of course, to help contain the Ravens. The Bears, as I've been saying the last couple of weeks, they lead the league in takeaways so far, and they've been leaning on takeaways heavily to win their last couple of games, particularly against New Orleans, where they ended up with 4 on the day and turned that game for them in a game where they weren't particularly moving the ball as well as they could do on offense, but with short fields and with a running game that's working very well for you amidst the relative work in progress that is the Bears offense. And that was enough. It's not going to be enough in Baltimore. I think the Ravens will be resurgent with Lamar back. It's a massive shot in the arm for them. Boy, do they need it. I mean, if you'd have been looking at this game at the start of the season, as I was as a Bears fan, I didn't ever think that the Bears would be arriving into town with the better record of the two, with the winning record, well in contention in the NFC North, while the Ravens desperately need this one. And I think that desperation will see them home. Kieran.
Yeah, and it's a team that's badly missed him. I mean, Cooper Rush, he's got a record of holding things down for teams when other quarterbacks have gone out injured, but he just wasn't able to do it with Baltimore. Yeah, having Lamar back is a huge shot in the arm. I mean, he's going to get everybody back involved in the game, from Zay Flowers to Mark Andrews, who's been, pretty much, the disappearing man or the missing man of the season so far. But what's also going to help for the Ravens is having Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey back, because they were just decimated on top of Lamar being out. That defense was just shredded with injuries. I think they're going to have Roquan Smith back too, which is going to be a huge shot in the arm. So I think all those factors combined with Lamar coming back he's obviously going to get everybody else involved. We know he's going to throw. How's he going to be on his feet? That's the question. And that's what everybody's going to be looking for in that game. With the Bears, though, like you said, the line is generous. I would give the Bears a better than fighting chance in this game. I mean, from what we've seen from the Bears so far, nice little run, nice little winning streak. But
we're streaking.
I'm still a little bit concerned about Caleb Williams. I mean, he's completed fewer than 60% of his passes. He's got that Trevor Lawrence kind of stigma right now of inaccurate throws. Completion rate is down. And he's got, it's just doesn't look like it's clicking for him right now. I mean, he's been bailed out by, as you said earlier, Swift and some of those other guys, Dunze and Burden. But I just feel like the Williams hasn't really taken that big step in year two that some people would think. But they're still winning games, so he's not doing anything to damage the team. So there's that. The Saints kind of put it up to them a little bit last week. I'd be worried about the Bears secondary, because the Saints, I mean, Spencer Rattler was able to put up 233 yards, I think, and 2 touchdowns on that team. So I'd be concerned about the passing game for the Ravens for this week. But like I said, it all depends on how Lamar is. I mean, if he's crocked in the first quarter and he's limited with his mobility, then it's all the momentum goes back to Chicago. But I would love to see Lamar coming back and just being relevant again in the league, and just showing the league what we've been missing the last 4 or 5 weeks. I give Chicago a great chance. I think they're going to end up losing in the end, but it's going to be a nice competitive game. Probably a field goal in the end, but I think Chicago's, they're going to be running on that feel good factor right now. They'll have a good outing, but I do like the Ravens by 3.
Brian, in your absence, I gave it to full Frank the Tank on Monday, saying that the Bears were going streaking up through the quad and to the gymnasium. I think Frank the Tank comes to a halt this weekend. How do you see it?
You might be streaking around the south side of Dublin if the Bears find a way to get over the line in this one.
In my birthday suit.
Well, we're going off kilter here. It's just coming out there that Lamar has been limited again 2 days in a row in practice. So I'm not sure it is a foregone conclusion that he's going to play on Sunday. But I will actually, something strikes me what Kieran said around the fact that they're getting some defensive players back. I think actually that could be a bigger part to play in this game. I'll go Ravens.
Shane?
I go with the Bears in this one.
Good man. We love your faith. I wish I could be more faithful in my own team. I don't know who to have faith with in the Dolphins-Falcons game, Shane. These are 2 teams that will only ever let you down, it seems. Falcons can be amazing one week and terrible the next. We talked about trying to figure out where their season is plotting based on some great victories and some head-scratching defeats that they've suffered. The Dolphins only seem to know how to lose games lately. It's got to change for one of them, though, this weekend. Which one will it be?
There's a big difference in the Dolphins and the Falcons. The Falcons are disappointed because they don't beat teams when they're playing against good teams, and they don't show up in performances when you want them to try and make a statement that they're going to try and top their division. The Dolphins are just terrible. And it really is that simple in the way that this team has played the last couple of weeks. Not only when it comes to coming out in the press and calling out his players not working hard enough, coming out in the press this week and saying, well, I actually can't pass some of my wide receiver because I can't see them. I'm like, why are you saying this?
This is the most bizarre thing I think I've ever heard a quarterback say, and we've heard some doozies. I can't see Jalen Waddle because the men in front of me are too tall.
Yeah.
In front.
How many excuses do you need? And it's frustrating for Dolphins fans. I was talking to a couple of them over the weekend when I was stateside, and just they just seem remarkably frustrated. You have to remember, the Dolphins are coming in on a 3-game loss streak. They're averaging 19 points per game, which is not very good. Last week, I think they were 1 of 13 on third down. Didn't get converted in the red zone. Tua's played 2 games now with 3 interceptions. They're one of the worst run defenses in the league, and they're going up against Bijan Robinson. They surrender more explosive runs, 30, than any other defense in the league. Their pass and run game is based too much on being able to get yards after catch, which when Tyreek Hill is out means it's just not happening. We saw Achane get a really good touchdown last week against Cleveland, but that was about it. That's like the only thing that happened for them offensively. And they go up against a Falcons team who, yes, just didn't show up offensively against San Francisco on Sunday Night Football, but their defense is the third lowest in terms of explosive pass rate. So even if Tua can't see who he's throwing to, they're not going to get far. The Falcons defense is designed not to get you into the red zone. I think the Falcons defense are the best in the league and make sure the teams don't get into the red zone in the first place, and B, not giving up explosive plays. They might not necessarily be great at reducing those third down conversions, but they're quite good at keeping things slow enough and turgid enough. So all you have to do is just, in Atlanta, keep that spider cam on top of Bijan Robinson, which you see these fantastic social media clips, and just watch him run for about 150 yards. We talk about the fact that the Falcons offense can often be a bit one-dimensional. It's something that Craig has mentioned before on the AV Club, is that it's too much on Bijan Robinson and Drake London. But against this Dolphins team, that's more than enough.
Yeah, check out the AV Club wherever you get your podcast. The lads have a little bit too much fun on the AV Club. I actually feel quite jealous, and I haven't been invited on once. Brian, the Falcons came up against a bit of a rock last week, or the immovable object in the case of Robert Saleh's 49ers defense, who did admirably in putting the clamps on Bijan, which put paid to the Falcons' chances of winning that game. I'm not sure the Dolphins can pull off the same trick.
No, you're saying who's going to have the fun? It'll be the Falcons fans on Sunday night having the fun. You would imagine, like, Shane has literally reeled off a number of pieces I already had, so I'll pull them away, but they are giving up an average of 159 yards per game. They gave up 172 weeks ago. And yeah, it strikes me as the kind of game that they'll win because they won't need to even use Bijan. They might actually go with different attack and try explore the offense in terms of getting more confidence around the team. London, Pitts, maybe this is a Michael Penix type of game where go out and have an expansive game offensively in terms of your throwing ability, because the Dolphins secondary isn't much better either. So why not double down on it and go for it? Because they probably will come out the right side of this game. It's whether they cover the Quinn Bet spread is what a lot of people will be wondering at the weekend, which is now at 7.5. I think they will win that. You said earlier on some games and some lines are surprising you. This is one that actually surprised me. I thought it would have been bigger for the weekend. I think this is a -10 type of field game about it. For me, I'd be surprised if anybody selecting the Dolphins this weekend. For me.
Hey, Falcons fans having fun on Sunday, says Brian. Shout out to Cormac Coughlin. Hope he's among them. A big Falcons fan, colleague of mine, and an absolute gent. Fingers crossed for you, Cormac, that it works out that way. Kieran?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Jets.
Jets of the South. For those who don't speak Kieran, that's the Falcons. 49ers visit the Texans in our next game up, Kieran. Texans have this, this fascinating for me because it's strength on weakness and weakness on strength, in that you got two of the most impressive defensive units in the NFL. Robert Saleh making do and mending and getting miracles out of the backups. The Texans with, Derek Stingley Jr., I think is probably slept on slightly as a defensive player of the year candidate. He's been absolutely amazing, even when up against some of the best wide receivers in the league. Texans offense sputtering, 49ers offense depleted, although starting to get people back, starting to get the best out of Christian McCaffrey again. Had George Kittle back in the lineup last week, and that made a big difference. Is it going to be enough to carry them to victory in Houston?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the one thing you can say about this Niners team right now is they just have grit. They're just making their way through it. It's not always pretty, but they're getting results, and it's being effective. Like you said, getting Kittle back was huge last week, but when you have somebody like McCaffrey doing what he did last week and what the Niners want him to do on a regular basis, that's the engine that's keeping this thing going. I mean, McCaffrey he almost has as many receiving yards as he does rushing yards, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. But that's how he's always been. He's been that kind of two use, double use player. I mean, some would say it's a surprise that the Niners are doing so well despite all of these injuries. I mean, Bosa's down. Bryce Huff is out. They lost Warner a couple of weeks back, and they're using Mac Jones right now. So they're just putting it all together with sellotape and with Band-Aids, but they're making it work. And like I said earlier, they're using that grit, and they're just grinding these games out. I think coming up against Texans team, like you said, has got two monsters in defense. I mean, even in the secondary, Jalen Petrie is an absolute beast too. But the injuries have decimated this team. I mean, the O-line itself was shaky to start with, and then they've lost some more pieces there. So Stroud is already kind of up against the ropes. Chubb has been okay on the ground. You're now losing Nico Collins with a concussion. I don't think he's going to play on Sunday. Christian Kirk, I don't think he's going to be available. That's two nice weapons that are gone. They're probably going to have to rely on the two rookies that they drafted, Jalen Noel and Jaden Huggins. And there's still
Noel had a nice game last week.
He did, and they're going to need him a lot more. That's really all they have at this stage. That the wide receiver room is pretty depleted. And there's still, we still have these questions about Stroud about year one in 2023. Was that a flash in the pan? And it's kind of the similar situation that we're having with Jaden Daniels right now was, because they're not winning those last minute games like they did last year. I still think Stroud is a phenomenal athlete. I think he's a great quarterback, but he's been, as we say with Cam Ward, he's been done a disservice with the O-line that was put in front of him. I think with a much bolstered, and this is not a question for now, but this is for the future for the Texans. They've got to do work on the O-line of the draft, and they've got to keep him upright and help him out. The weapons are fine. They're just the struggle is keeping them on the field. But when all is said and done, I think the 49ers have too much weaponry. You put them up side by side. I mean, Christian McCaffrey could probably win that game by himself, but Jones is quietly doing a nice job. But when you've Christian McCaffrey out there and little bits and pieces like Pearsall, and you add in some of the other factors that they have, I think it's going to be too much for the Texans, despite the fact that it's in Texas. I just think the Niners have too much. They're on a nice little roll right now, and that'll help them to 6-2.
Well, I'm 49 on Sunday, Brian, as you know. What? It's so hard to believe. I'll put my skincare regime up on Instagram for anybody who's interested in looking this well. It takes a lot of work to look this shook at my age. So how could I not go with the 49ers, Brian?
Game-winning field goal from the Texans, Fairbairn, to knock off the 49ers, which I don't believe is a big shock as people may believe. They're only 1.5 point underdogs. So Texans for me.
Brian knows ball. He's picking against the Niners. Faithful, you know where to come. Right, we're into the 8 o'clock window now, where the Bucs visit the Saints. Brian, this is a nice little divisional clash that has produced some crazy games over the years, and it would be seen as a little bit crazy if the Saints were to turn over the Bucs at home. But they have form in that regard. Bucs 5.5 point favorites. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go that way. What way do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, these two always play each other tough, no matter what the circumstances. When the Saints were riding high with Drew Brees, quarterback, and the Bucs were going through a difficult time when Jameis Winston was their quarterback, they still always found a way to raise their game. It's no different for me this Sunday in terms of two teams obviously in different paths this season, one looking likely to be selecting high in the draft come April 2026. But when they play each other, it's difficult. And let's not forget, this Bucs team were really beat up on Monday night. Me and Connor spoke about it. The result probably doesn't do it justice in terms of how dominant the Lions were. The Lions left them hanging around for large parts. But for the Bucs team that we've seen win, I won't say convincingly, but they obviously had big wins against the 49ers the previous week. They've been carrying injuries as well. Caught up with them on Monday night. And they're going to go across here into the New Orleans. And the Saints are sneaky. They're sneaky good at home. They lose the games, but they play well. They gave it to the Patriots for large parts. They obviously beat the Giants. They played well against the Cardinals in week 1. But in saying that, I'm still going with the Bucs, Connor, because I think the Bucs are one of those sneaky teams in the NFC that could be there challenging come the playoff time. So I think what we've learned over the course of the last year and two with the Bucs team is these type of occasions, as difficult as they are, it doesn't phase them. It certainly doesn't phase Baker Mayfield. Yeah, they're ravaged with injuries. Obviously, it's a big blow that Mike Evans has now gone realistically for probably inevitably for the large part of the season. But I still think they've got enough weapons. And Baker Mayfield gets the best out of these wide receivers. So, tight game. Still think the Bucs.
You mentioned something there that I'll be watching closely, and it reminds me of a couple of seasons ago when the 49ers were on their last run to the Super Bowl, to the one we were at actually in Vegas a couple of years ago. The teams that played the 49ers during that season nearly always lost the following week because they were so beat up after those games. I think that the Bucs took a real shellacking, and of course they're coming off short rest, as you mentioned as well. And that's something that I'll be watching closely. I think it probably will slow the Bucs down. I would not be shocked actually if the Saints overcome the spread here. It's one of those kind of funny little divisional games, as we mentioned. Saints have looked good at home. Spencer Rattler, although they had turnover problems last week against the Bears, as we mentioned earlier, had a nice game, put up 233 yards, found Olave on a couple of deep balls, really took the top off that Bears defense and exposed some of the weaknesses in a secondary that we thought was much stronger than it showed up last week. So the Saints have it in them to be explosive. We've seen Rashid Shaheed, as he did a couple of weeks ago against the Giants, when the Giants got upended by the Saints, do the business for them there. Alvin Kamara, always dangerous. And again, that Saints defense, not quite as bad in practice as it may have looked in paper when we were running the rule over them earlier this season. I think they are going to pick up wins here and there, and they are going to be a stone in the shoe of a few teams. As you mentioned, Brian, they gave the Bills a good run for their money. They gave the Patriots a good run for their money. They gave the streaking Bears a good run for their money last week, and I think they'll give the Bucs a good run for their money too. It won't be quite enough. I am predicting a Bucs victory, a Tampa Bay victory in this one. Kieran?
Yeah, I got the Bucs too.
Shane?
Remember last year in New Orleans, this game, the Saints scored 27 points in the second quarter, and then the Bucs end up winning 51-27. These two teams always bring up a good game that's good crack, but I think the Bucs are going to win. I'd also like to say for the record, by the way, because I think it was skip past, I've picked the Texans to beat the 49ers as well, so I'm also on the non-faithful crew this week.
My apologies, but you're back on the dance floor again here, Shane, with Titans taking the trip to Indy to play the pretty dominant-looking Colts, who just can't stop scoring.
Can't stop scoring, but not only that, if you actually look at the way that their offense has been playing the last couple of weeks, they're actually getting bolder in what they're trying and how explosive they are trying to be. Like the first couple of weeks, we're like, oh, Daniel Jones is looking pretty well because he's tidy. Now Daniel Jones and the rest of the guys are looking pretty well because he's using receivers well. They're getting further down the field, and they're just playing with the swagger of a team who are just really enjoying playing football, which is very different to what we've seen from the Colts the last couple of years. Very different as well what we've seen from Daniel Jones in previous years. It's interesting, like they're averaging 32 points a game, which is the number one offensive football. Alec Pierce is getting a lot of big plays in the way he has been previously. Tyler Warren has scored a touchdown in 4 straight. Daniel Jones had a 113 rating against that Chargers secondary last week in Los Angeles, and that Chargers secondary isn't the most easy in the world to try and navigate. Against a Titans defense that has allowed 73% of passes to be complete. You know, they gave a lot of room for wide receivers against the Patriots last week. The Patriots probably take some credit for that, but I think the Titans are just a team who give up a lot of big plays. So when the Colts are coming in, rocking in, who are becoming a lot better at making big plays against a defense who are getting worse at giving up a lot of big plays, then you see there's a reason why the Colts are 14-point favorites. So Colts a big win here.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. That Colts machine is just really clicking. It's really impressive to watch. They're doing the thing that good teams do, that really good teams do. You know, as they always say, good teams win, great teams cover. The Colts have been pouring points on any defense where they think they can take advantage. They got so many weapons and they deploy them so well. We've spoken at length about the way they're using Tyler Warren. Pittman has been excellent this season. JT is the bedrock of everything that they do well on offense, and you don't sleep on the Colts defense either. I think it's another very, very tough day looming at the office for Cam Ward and for a Titans team that frankly looks in disarray, as we talked about on Monday. Kieran?
Yeah, Titans are poor, Colts are phenomenal. Easy win.
Brian?
Daniel Jones leading us all the way to Santa Clara. Connor? No. Colts for me this weekend.
Okay, we're heading to Mile High next after a quick break.
Build your own unique football bets with Create a Bet. Winning team, first goal scorer, number of goals, the possibilities are endless. QuinnBet, we bet you love it.
The Cowboys take the trip to Denver to play the Broncos, fresh from their crazy up and down victory over the Giants. Sorry, Brian, but Cowboys in town, and the Broncos in the position that they're in says to me that this could be a very, very entertaining game, and one of the better ones and one of the spicier ones to look forward to this weekend.
Yeah, I'm still very confident in my selection at the start of the season, which was raised a few eyebrows that the Cowboys would find a way to be in the playoffs. But right now, how could you argue offensively? They're playing so well. Dak Prescott is at an MVP level. I don't think this weekend will overawe them whatsoever. In fact, I think they could probably take some comfort in what we saw last weekend, that a team that they also beat in a high-scoring game was able to go in and put the number down on this Broncos defense for essentially for 4 quarters, because even late on when the Broncos did come back, the Giants still found a way, albeit with some dubious potential, flags, they still found a way to navigate another score. So they to go in there, put 30-odd points. I imagine the Cowboys are distant thinking, sure, why can't we not do that? I think ultimately it will come down to, as it seems to do every week right now, is how well this Cowboys defense can play. They played well last weekend, but then you can argue Jaden Daniels' injury was a big factor. I am going to lean Broncos because I think just defensively they'll have the experience just to navigate a victory, but I still think it's a tricky game for them to navigate. And maybe sometimes you touched on it, Connor, before, you win the enormity of these big games, and everyone's been talking about the Giants for all the wrong reasons this week. Maybe sometimes there's an impact on the team that comes out the right side of it. Can I make a quick extra point, seeing as though this game is in Mile High? Boom, boom. The Cowboys kicker, I mean, he's getting 64, 65 yarders. Like, are we in a scenario this weekend where potentially they could be kicking a season record or maybe even an NFL record?
That is a great shout at altitude. If anyone is capable of beating that record, it is Aubrey. And at that height, you absolutely wouldn't back against them.
Yeah, I think it's one to look at the weekend, even in the Quinn bet in terms of your prop bets around getting him in there for a couple of big goals. But for the game itself, I will lean Broncos, but I think it could be one of the better games this weekend.
Kieran.
Oh, I think it will definitely be one of the good games this weekend. I mean, the Cowboys, all they do is put up points. And Dak has been great the last 3-4 weeks. I mean, 16 plays of 30 yards or more on offense. I mean, the Cowboys are just chucking it up and down the field, and that was even without CeeDee Lamb. And now they've got him back, they're going to be throwing it even more. Their games Cowboy games are averaging 61 points, 7 combined touchdowns, and a combined 792 yards. So we should see some fireworks up in Mile High. But Dak's been great. Another game with 3 touchdowns. That's his 4th straight game with 3 touchdowns. He's I wouldn't say MVP level right now because the team around him is not great, but he's not the problem right now. And he's had plenty of detractors in the past who have questioned his skills and ability to lead this Cowboys team, but no interceptions in that stretch either. I mean, he's been flawless. And like I said, he's now got CeeDee Lamb back. So you got George Pickens, CeeDee, and Javonte Williams is picking up the pace and starting to run a little bit more. The Broncos, I mean, I know the game is in Denver. It's going to be nice weather. I just looked at it's going to be sunny and 68. So there'll be that Aubrey. There should be plenty of opportunities for Aubrey to hit a 70 plus yard kick. But this Broncos team, it's not really. I mean, listen, we all know the defense is phenomenal. But I mean, the offense has struggled to play against the Jets. They struggled against the Giants. The Giants shut them out, as we all know, until whatever happened. I forget what happened in the last 6 minutes of that game. But the offense really hasn't, wowed me all that much. And they've relied a lot on the defense. They only opened it up, I think it was against the Bengals about a month ago. But for me, I mean, I know the Cowboys' defense is paper thin, and I'm sure the Broncos are going to use a boatload of J.K. Dobbins against that run defense. But when you've got, when you're on the offensive side, when you have CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Dak throwing, for 300 yards every single game, and then you got Javonte out there, that's a phenomenal weapon to have. I know the Cowboys are on the road and they haven't been great on the road, but I like them in this game. I think they've got too much weaponry for the Broncos, and this is going to be one of those we'll see Peyton looking a little sour on the sidelines.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kieran. I think the Cowboys are going to have more fun against that Broncos defense than a lot of teams have had. We saw what the Giants were able to do to them. I'm very interested to see what the Cowboys have schemed up. Dak has been playing out of his mind. CeeDee Lamb just rolled right back in. And as you say, the fact that Pickens isn't quite the WR1 with CeeDee back in town doesn't seem to have bothered him at all. And Javonte Williams looking for that revenge of the old boy game. Shane?
This is the game of the week. I think the Broncos have gotten away with the last couple, so I'm going to pick the Cowboys to win.
If that's the game of the week, I think probably Packers-Steelers, which is the Sunday night football game, would give it a run for its money, and that's our next game up here. Not the Aaron Rodgers revenge game, according to Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't view it that way. He's managed to play his previous team as well this season. He beat the Jets in week 1, and the Steelers host the Packers this weekend. It would have been interesting, obviously, even more interesting if it was in Lambeau. Rodgers' sole Super Bowl victory, of course, came against the Steelers. So there's not a narrative intrigue in this one, and where both teams are makes it that much more interesting as well. It's rare enough that you would imagine the Steelers are going to be underdogs at home. I think it's justified this week, though, and I'm fascinated to see how this matchup unfolds. I think the Steelers offensively have been playing much better than we expected, and that's working. Arthur Smith has gotten a nice balance there. I don't think they're leaning too heavily on Rodgers, who looks incredibly mobile in the pocket compared to where he was last season, only recovering from that Achilles injury. He looks a lot more sprightly and a lot more agile than he has done in a long time, and it's really helping him do things in that offense. I think the chemistry with the receivers, other than DK Metcalf, that's been there from day one, but the chemistry with the other receivers has been better. You had an absolute lights out game from Warren in the running game last week, and they really were making things happen for him. And that Steelers O-line, which has kept Rodgers sack free in, I think, 3 of the last 4 games, and they've the very low sacks given up number so far this season. On the other side, I think Steelers secondary, as we saw, can really be taken advantage of. They were just being absolutely suckered into those quick slants all day long. And that's what actually I think is going to be the key to this game. We saw what the Bengals were able to scheme up and how they were able to exploit weaknesses in the Packers passing defense. If there's a team in the league and if there's a coach in the league that can replicate that, it's Matt LaFleur. And I think that's what gives me confidence in the Packers going in there. I think that is very much strength on weakness from my point of view. And I think that's what wins the day for Green Bay. Shane.
Just to qualify my last statement, there was, the last game was tied for game of the week. This is also up there. Last game of the red zone window. I guess this game, there really is so much to get into, even outside of the narrative aspect of it, just because of the quality of players that we're going to see on the field. I think on the Aaron Rodgers point, I think emotion is very key to how strong he will play. We saw emotion being a big drive for him against the Jets, and he played quite well. And to your point, Connor, he looked pretty mobile, much more mobile than he looked playing for the Jets last year. I think it was a boost for him actually when he played in Ireland. I think something about that, the emotion of that occasion, ended up giving him something. And we've actually seen a bit of that game being a bit of a turning point in how Aaron Rodgers in the passing offense has played. He's throwing much fewer turnover-worthy passes, and he's throwing much more passes that are going they're going further down the field. And his average depth of target is now over 7 yards. It was under 5 yards over the first 3 weeks. So I'd say he's starting to really bed into that. But what's interesting is the fact that he has faced the second fewest pressures in the NFL. So he won't be used to the Micah Parsons treatment or what LaFleur would be able to throw at him against the Steelers offensive line, who, let's be fair about this, have not been the most reliable, and I think are dealing with a couple of knocks as well. There's a lot in that. I think Rodgers is going to have to deal with a different level of challenge that he has experienced thus far this season. And in his run game is going to be key. And we know Jaylen Warren has the potential to really blow up, but hasn't been consistent enough to really make you sit back and say, oh yeah, this is definitely going to happen. They're definitely going to try and put it up to the Packers. On the other side of things, the Steelers defensive line will be ferocious, and they're probably one of the more well-coordinated packs in the league. Now, they didn't put in a good performance against Joe Flacco on Thursday night, but again, I'm putting that down to the kind of Thursday night weirdness that they couldn't really jump all over that Cincinnati offensive line. I think they're going to have a better job. They're going to do a better job of doing that against Jordan Love, who, again, Jordan Love is not good when he's under pressure. He doesn't complete many passes. He sometimes gives up turnovers when he is under pressure. And I think that front line is going to really try and get on him. Even if the Steelers secondary gives up a lot of yards, it's going to be a big push. But in terms of the actual key to this, it's a very, very difficult game to call. I think the Packers are worthy favorites because I think they have more parts of their game. So there are few weaknesses in their game, I think, for the Steelers to go and exploit. But I'm choosing to believe that this is going to be the game where Rodgers doesn't make a mistake, where there's something in the Steelers cornerback awakens in them that they're going to get more. They're going to get a turnover, which is something they haven't really been able to do for much of this year in terms of their secondary. It's often been the frontline players in Pittsburgh who've been able to do most of that work. And that Jordan Love might end up just giving up, there's some sloppy turnover or a short field for Pittsburgh to go, and for Aaron Rodgers and co, maybe 30, 40 yards to go and punish. This could very well be like a 17-14 type game. Very, very close, very, very tight. And it's going to be a battle right to the end. But I'm backing the Steelers, not only because Aaron Rodgers, I think, is going to be putting a lot of focus and emotion in this, and he's the kind of player who plays well when there's emotion involved as opposed to letting occasion get to him. I think his team are going to step up and play for him as well. So I'm backing the Steelers in this one.
Cool beans. That Sunday night kickoff obviously takes place an hour earlier as well, as we were saying right at the outset. But if you weren't there, just to remind you, with the clocks going back here on this side of the Atlantic and not for a couple of weeks for daylight saving in the States, we get the Sunday night football game at 20 past midnight with the bank holiday the next day. If anything says a couple of beers your doctor's recommending you for a couple of beers, we're rowing in behind that recommendation as well. That'll be a pretty sweet watch. Monday Night Football is Commanders at Chiefs, Kieran, where the Chiefs are 10-point favourites.
Yes, they are, and it doesn't look like, well, at least at this stage, I'm not sure if Daniels is going to be playing, but I think he's been ruled out.
He's out. He's out.
He is out. Yeah, I think I've been looking at the websites all day. He's been ruled out. So I mean, that's fully merits that line. I mean, Washington right now are dealing with a huge amount of injuries. I don't want to say or repeat the old line that they've been old or they got an older roster because, you know, Zach Ertz is still out there doing his thing. So it's, you know, I think Debo and McLaurin might be back as well. I think they're probably going to be game time decisions, but I think everybody at this stage of the league is questionable. I mean, they badly need this win too. I mean, they're shuffling and they're struggling. They're on a 2 games losing slide. They've given up 251.8 passing yards per game. I mean, that's a stat that's going to send nightmares to Washington fans. But the Chiefs, I mean, you know, we thought they were done. We talked about in September about this could be it for the Chiefs, but how little we knew. I mean, I'm telling you, this Chiefs team now is. We talked about resurgent teams. We talked about what the Bengals look like, you know, with a quarterback that's slinging the ball around. Mahomes is going to be. It's going to be like, you know, taking pot shots all over the place. He's going to be throwing the ball everywhere in this game. That defense is depleted. I mean, Washington only has a takeaway on 4% of opponents' possessions, so they're not even going to be a threat in that regard. This is going to be a team that is going to be so depleted that it's not. I mean, I think a lot of people will probably turn off by the third quarter for this game because it's going to be such a shootout or a blowout. Mahomes, the last 3-4 weeks has just been a different beast. I mean, they annihilated the Raiders last week, as Shane saw firsthand. But Mahomes is he's playing at an MVP level. I mean, he's leading the league in success rate on passing plays. Over the last 4 weeks, he's got Rashee Rice there. He's got Xavier Worthy. Even Smith-Schuster's being serviceable, and Tyquan Thornton has come out of nowhere. You know, he's completed 71.3% of all his passes, 11 touchdowns, one interception. He is just at a clip right now that the Washington will not be able to sustain. And he's also rushing for a career high 35.7 yards per game. So there's that for them to deal with as well. We talked a lot about, you know, last year about that Washington defense and how Frankie Louvu could be in effect. And the Washington defense hasn't really been a factor this year. I mean, they've been scuffling along. Those wins that they had last year, they've not been able to turn those into wins this year. Different factors, which we all talked about and thought was going to be the play in any regard. But I mean, they're coming up against a buzzsaw this week. This might be the most uncompetitive game of the week. If it was further along in the schedule or further along in the year, this is definitely one that could have been flexed out from the Monday night game. But with all the injuries Washington have, can anyone see a situation where the Chiefs will struggle? Chiefs at home, you know, with the lights on, with the country of the world watching. This is Mahomes' stage. This is what he's comfortable with. This is what he's been doing for, you know, 8-9 years at this stage. It's going to be a huge win for the Chiefs. 10.5 is being generous. Yeah. What else can you say? Chiefs win.
Shane, before I ask you for your prediction on Commanders at Chiefs, I realized that on the eve of our own presidential election, no less, when people get to exercise their democratic franchise, I've committed a dreadful faux pas and disenfranchised both yourself and Brian by not asking you for your picks in the Sunday Night Football game. Brian, who was your pick for Packers Steelers? I feel bad we didn't get to ask you.
Self and Kieran. I would go with Steelers. I think defense bounces back and gets a victory.
And Kieran, before we go back to Shane, go on, tell us who's going to win the Packers Steelers game.
Go Pack, go!
Okay, good stuff. Shane, we record scratch back to Commanders Chiefs.
Yeah, flicker fresh. If this after the game in Arrowhead on Sunday, there was just an unbelievable energy surrounding the Chiefs in terms of when the guys are coming out. I didn't get to go into the locker room, but I was kind of nearby as going in, and you just kind of look around, and even the guys who've been there, you know, and seen everything, you're like, oh, they're back, oh, they're kicking in now, and everything's fitting in. Because if you look at the way their seasons roll out, they had 3 home games in a row, which has kind of felt pretty sweet before in the next few weeks to have to go at Buffalo, at Denver, at home to the Colts, and then against the Cowboys in Thanksgiving, which is, four very, very crucial games, which we weren't expecting the Colts at home to be a crucial game. But in the AFC one seed race, that's kind of the way it's turning out. So I'm not even gonna break down anything about the Commanders. I think just purely on the Chiefs side, like, they're not going to let this game slip. There's two teams here, one that gives away a lot of big plays and loses a lot of big plays, and one that is now in a position to start making a lot more big plays and making a lot more frequently. Obviously, with Rice being back, Worthy's fit, Hollywood Brown is fit. I think am I right in saying last week was the first time they actually had all three of those in the field at the same time? Travis Kelce was making a lot of plays. He had more yards than any of those guys did last week. And even Mahomes and having the swagger to come out in that first drive of the fourth quarter, the second quarter, we're like, this is going to work, man. This isn't going to work, and then it just ran it in on a 4th and 1. Like, the swagger is really building back up for the Chiefs, and you could sense that energy in there. That the reports of the Chiefs' death were greatly exaggerated, and they're not going to let the Commanders come in and even put a dent in that. Never mind actually lose this game. So yeah, Chiefs by 10 at least.
Yeah, we talked about the poor Patriots being in the doldrums for all of 4 years. The Chiefs only managed it for 4 games, or was it even that much? Yeah, it's Chiefs for me as well. Brian?
Yeah, the Commanders' defense will be the talking point on Tuesday for all the wrong reasons, because it was a bad result last week in Dallas, and it's not going to get any better this week in KC on Monday Night Football. Chiefs all the way.
Right, that's your 13 games. Unlucky for some, but lucky for us, because some great ones in there, and we get them an hour earlier on Sunday. You can check out our Bank Holiday Instant Reaction podcast, and we will be back on Monday evening on the Bank Holiday to recap the Week 8 action.